All right, ladies and gents, we are back with another Next Level Radio podcast. You guys are probably getting sick and tired of just being me since COVID's been happening, but we do have a guest with us in-house today. I gave a brief intro earlier, but very briefly, Kylan Klauzer, Detective Sargent. Is it still 15 or is it closer to how many years?
About 15 and a half.
15 and a half. Cool, man.
Price is right. We'll round up.
Exactly. So if you know Dickinson, Miles City, Baker, a lot of these places, we have a big pipeline of guys that come through the college football team, the university. And so Kylan, originally out of Baker, came to Dickinson State, played some football, very successful at that. And then from there, just kind of implanted into the community, man. So I'll have you kind of introduce yourself for everybody that doesn't know you.
No, that was pretty good. That probably wraps it up in a nutshell, to be honest with you. But, I mean, the skinny of it for me is it's a small town, rural America. Grew up on a ranch in Carter County, which is a couple miles closer to Ecolocka than the Baker. And the way it worked out, Carter County just economically poor, different things. So they paid us actually to go into the Fallon County system because it was a little bit closer and the roads were better. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that worked out. That worked out and ended up going to school on the Baker side. And graduated a Spartan. Once a Spartan, always a Spartan. Mm-hmm. And the connections, as you said there, they kind of they lay themselves together rather quickly if you're from this area and listening to this, because it ties into the Stanton family, Schillinger family, and there's some Stevensons in there, and Breitbachs, and a lot of big names out of the Eastern Montana sports area. So pretty lucky, pretty fortunate, man.
Yeah, man. We've had a very good, successful line of people from there.
For sure.
I mean, one that I know, Gentilini, he's from there, around there, so he's nothing but trouble. But I wanted to get this off right off the bat so that people can, I'll tie it into the show notes, but Off the Cuff podcast is kind of just starting up. We're rocking and rolling. Things I got from it, I listened to it a few times, kind of the human aspect behind law enforcement, tying back into the community, connecting with the community, and then you guys are being very transparent about law enforcement issues, community events, all this different stuff. And so kind of give the quick and easy on Off the Cuff.
Well, it was something that came a few years ago on the first discussions, and I don't know, we played around with it for quite a while, and like, okay, do we do this? How do you go about this when you're a law enforcement agency and you're looking to have these kinds of conversations, and what I mean is just these free narrative things where you're trying to talk about real issues, real things, and have real honest opinions about it. And that kind of is where the hinge point on the door becomes, because then you all of a sudden now you gotta be very careful on the line with what you are by oath and sworn to do, and make sure that you're standing at a particular position where you're keeping everything in front of you. And so we wade through that for quite a while, and I think we came to a spot where we felt good about the content that we would bring on board and move forward with, and so it'll primarily be related to public safety, criminal justice reform, some current trends, things like that, current state of crime trends in the community across the state, and we'll have everybody from Representative Kelly Armstrong, like we talked about before the show, to next episode is our public administrator, Brian Winningham. And but the essence of it all is just to try to tie this stuff back into criminal justice, law enforcement, and putting the kind of conversation you and I are having today on it that people can listen to and hopefully relate to better. Because I get passionate about it really quickly, just because the whole, for me, in the selection of the profession, it goes deep, it goes far to my childhood, and I just I know how I felt about it, law enforcement and criminal justice as a kid growing up, and it wasn't good. It was fairly negative, and only at a point where I had a couple things in my life happen where that started to swing back. And I feel like if maybe something like this, for nowadays with this generation, they're just, they're the followings and the way that people are looking for conversations. Had something like this maybe been available when I was a lot younger to me, more accessible, I probably would have had, I would have been better educated and had a different view on things early in life. So
definitely. I have the outsider's perspective of it too. Most of my family, I was kind of the black sheep. It was either you're going to be a law enforcement officer or you're going to go to the military. College football wasn't kind of that thing. And so stepdad, uncle, my grandpa was the mayor. And so I had this outsider's perspective that I cared for these people, but they're the same people in my hometown. The economy crashed. It's actually one of the highest for federal arrests for drugs. It's a very bad deal, but I had this perspective. I care for these people, and they're kind of getting shit on. Like they're looked at as bad people because they're upholding the law and the Constitution, and so that was a little bit different for me. So I think the big thing that I got from off the cuff is like it's very cool that you guys can. There's not a lot of times. It's not great when you run into. There should be great times when you run into a law enforcement officer, and this podcast can be that. The human aspect behind. These guys have families. These guys are out in the community. Right. They're doing things. So that's what I really appreciated from it. And then just the case reports, the trends, that kind of stuff is interesting for a well-educated citizen too.
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of successful cases in my career in investigations here, and I've been on the bad end of it. I've been sued, and we've been taken all the way to the federal Supreme Court, appealed all the way to the federal Supreme Court, and so both ends of the spectrum there with as a law enforcement officer, these good stories and bad stories, to be able to open up to people and say, hey, I got two daughters at home, and I have, as far as the good days and the bad days. I hope that we can really dive into some of that with the conversation, and because the way it looks, growing up, there's such a hard thing from Hollywood and stuff on how people want to view when they see the squad car and they see the uniform and they see the badge, and they want to say to themselves like they have this like, well, therein must be the special force operator who can perform surgery, heart surgery on somebody at the same time as writing a fictional novel. And you go down the list of all these things that, the expectations that exist there. And it's just, it's not the case. And, the real human beings, real men and women with real lives of their own, and put their pants on the same way, everybody else does in the morning. And so it's hopefully, trying to at least find a mesh point in that conversation for people that are listening and are interested in it. And
just as well as I think our community will appreciate that a lot. I talk about it a little bit later, but I wouldn't be anywhere where I'm at right now without Dickinson. It's a crazy nice, there's successful people that want success all the way around.
Yeah. The opportunities that lie here with the type of community and culture, it's phenomenal. And I've always said it from the beginning. They're going to give you a chance, and it's going to be up to you. But there are opportunities that I'd be hard pressed to say you would find in a lot of other communities. They're just they're very open and welcoming, and using myself, just coming from what I would call very, very low class America, being able to take and be provided opportunities and make the most of it, and then just see other opportunities open because of that. I love Dickinson, and my family's had two opportunities to leave to go to some larger metropolitan areas for employment, and we sit down, and in these instances, we pros and cons. And always at the top of the list is this community, and I know that sometimes we become, I think we become numb to that stuff because you're living here and these people are, it's just like, okay, day to day, and you find yourself in the routine, getting up and stuff. But I try to say it more and more the older I get. I'm closer to 40 than 30 now, and two daughters, and I'm just at a spot where it's like we need to highlight it more and more that, damn, we live in a phenomenal place right now with everything going on. So.
Yeah, well, you'd be hard-pressed, not anything against those two places, but Baker, Ekalaka, Warland, you'd be hard-pressed to get those kind of opportunities.
Right.
It has big city feel opportunities for whatever you're into. And a subculture that both of you and I got to experience that I think ties very heavily into why Dickinson, the university, is so successful is Bluehawk football, or just Bluehawks as a whole. So how was that, Warland being a little bit bigger than Baker, not much, but how was that transition from small town into what was now the early 2000s of Dickinson?
Yeah, well, at that time, I think it would have been about 15,000 people, 16,000 people, and the university's enrollment at that time was probably closer to 3,000. So it's about half the size it was then too. So the makeup in the community, like the community wasn't as big, but it was almost like there was a, like an adage that like the footprint of that university was bigger because there was just and so now things have kind of evolved and stuff, and it's still doing great, but. They went through some hard times up there and are obviously on the rebound from that. But it was interesting. I was coming out of high school. I'd taken 2 trips up to the University of Montana, and in my own ignorant mind, I thought that like for sure it was going to go that way for Grizz country, and I was all in there. Really been communicating with Coach Hauk up there at that time. He was on the defensive side of the ball, and then the final call never came, and things just didn't work out that way, I guess you could say. And there lying in the wait, Pete Stanton and Hank started the conversations with me, Coach B and Coach Stanton, and I was like, and right away, I mean, again, this is ignorance, but I'm like, God, man, I don't know if people thought I was going to do this, and now I'm going to, DSU, like, man, that's
Exactly.
going to look bad for me, and I don't know how that's going to come across. I don't know if I want to swallow that kind of pill and look that way, and the ego was really getting in the way, and so Jay Schillinger, he came and met up with me one-on-one, and that was kind of the swivel that I saw. He was over here playing, and I'd watched Jace have just an immense amount of success, and one of the greatest athletes that I've ever played with. And he sold me. He put it into a way that he's like, you come over here, and these opportunities that we talked about here, you're going to get these opportunities over here that'll set you up, and it did, and the rest is it was just awesome. If I could replay it over. That's one stage of my life. I wouldn't do high school over, but DSU, Bluehawk football, you snap your fingers. I'd start it over in a heartbeat, man. It was awesome. Yeah,
you always have good things to look forward to, but you look at those as some of the best years. Honestly, it's really cool. I feel blessed to have it. I mean, we didn't win. We won 2 games that year, but felt blessed to have the old DSU culture as well, because I got to play under Coach Bijou for a year, and it was really cool to see his mark. At times, everybody knew like it was time. It was time for transition. It was running the power I formation. We're getting called out. We're doing sweep right. Like Rocky knows what we're doing. So things like that. It was really cool to just see that transformation, that focal point. Because as soon as I got to play in the Frontier, playing Carroll, just like you did, and didn't have much success as you guys did. But as we saw that focal point turn, we changed conferences, head coaches, all new coaching staff. Things really started clicking, and I'm very interested in, because I didn't get to personally see it. I see you and all these people that I know that played, but how was that culture? Not different per se, but how did that culture elevate you guys? Because you guys had a lot of success for the people that don't know.
Yeah, so from that 2000 to 2005 era, I think something that, again, people, they think DSU and maybe they just only focus on, okay, these guys in this uniform. But I mean, I had Nick Walker as a quarterback for a short stint, played University of Montana. I had a left tackle for several years I went against that was, back it up, for the first year and a half, 2 years, I had a left tackle that played for Montana State University that transferred over, and Dennis Morris. I had a left tackle that came out of NDSU, Josh Epperly, who came back after a couple years and played against him. I had the guy who played next to me on the D-line side of it, Ross Walker. I mean, he's a UND guy who came back over, and so There's a few others in there that aren't coming to mind right away, but we had, you had Phil Espinosa and Rafe Espinosa. And so Rafe, he was a Boise State guy who came over. You had his brother Phil, who was a Montana State transfer who came in. And so, there was some pedigree there that came together at a time. And Hank had a little bit of a knack for that, for those ones that were maybe unsettled at wherever they were. I know I've been told that, like, history-wise. But, and that's, I don't even know what to say past that. But, these guys were really, really good and had a lot of upside to them. And when you play with great guys like that, and guys who want to win, it's a pretty fun locker room to be in. Everybody's kind of got that same mindset. So.
Yeah. Well, you're going against the best D1 talent at a very small school. You're going against those guys, and just as well as I, scout teams, what makes a team. If we can have good quality, hardworking, motivated people on that end. I was lucky to have we got that pipeline of Samoan guys. I had Sefa and Noe and Una, and these guys are just massive human beings. And I liked the simplicity when I got here. Coach B sits me down. He fell asleep when he was recruiting me in the meeting. That's just Coach B for you. And the big thing is don't lie, don't steal.
Yeah, right.
He would just always keep it very simple. But man, I held out for a few more months, got a little bit more money, and we hit the ground running. It was simple. We line up, we play, and then it was kind of cool to see that transition as we went along.
Yeah, I had there's a couple of them at the beginning, and they were recruiting from over in North Dakota, and one of them was Minot State at that time. I'll leave the coach's name out of it, but he'd recruited pretty hard, and they had offered a very, very nice scholarship to go up there, much more money than it was to come here. Yeah. As you guys know, they're Hawk fans listening. It was chump change, but I got over here, and it was a moment for me and with Hank, and I signed right out of the gates. I came over thinking I don't want to do this, and I walked away signing. And I came over by myself. I didn't have anybody with me, and I remember I had told him I was going to go up to Minot State for a trip, and I think Hank, I might have slipped up and that got back to Hank too, but he. And that never happened, and so I did kind of bamboozle him there, and so I could understand the coach's frustration. But when he called me the next time and, hey, come up, and then I told him, I said, well, hey, man, I messed up here. I signed with DSU, and I did say, I messed up trying to think I was going to save me in this conversation, and it didn't. And this coach, he unloads on me, and he goes, are you kidding me? And there's some explicits in there, and did he get you? And then he starts telling me, he said, did Hank get you in his office and corner you with a cigar? And he starts going he goes really crazy with it. And I'm and I was stuttering and stammering and just I need to end this conversation and be done. And no, and I'm sorry, and he, okay, well, we'll see you on the field. That was the last thing he told me. He's like, we'll see you on the field. And I never forgot that because we smoked Minot for 4 years. They had one game on us where Coach B's son was coaching up there on the other side of the ball for him, and they had us on the ropes here at home, down a few scores, all kinds of stuff going their way. And we came back and rallied on it. And he never shook my hand after any of those games. He'd come down the line and then he'd jump out and I always shared, and Coach Stanton Pete, he knew this from the beginning too, because he had asked me about the Minot State, and so the story itself. And so it was pretty pleasant, and you get it too when you're on that field and you're wearing that blue and that gray. I was like, it was a good feeling.
Yeah. Well, even my era, we hear about that, the Minots, the Marys, and this culture of just hate, true bitter hate for those people. I had a story. I got here, we won 2 games, and we beat Jamestown because everybody beats Jamestown. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to a lot of these different people, and maybe it's the Baker, the small town feel. I was talking to a lot of people, and they're like, dude, I'm thinking about transferring. We got to get out of here. And it never crossed my mind. We won that one game, and it just never crossed my mind, I got to get out of here. I don't want to meet more people. I don't want to mess up my academics. This is what I want to do. And so once I kind of had that perspective switch, there's people that think about just the W's. These are brothers. These are I hardly talk to anybody from high school, but they're all here. The college guys are here. And so I just couldn't fathom that we were trying to get out of something instead of changing it. And luckily, you guys had success. We had a little bit of some down years, and then now we're where we're at today. So it's cool to see that we're back where we need to be. Because I was talking to Coach Stanton the other day, and I'm just, if you're a NAI D2 caliber guy, you can't quite make NDSU. It's almost a uneducated decision to go anywhere else in the NAI in North Dakota.
Yeah.
We're finally at that point, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, the success Coach Stanton's had out of the gates here is it's pretty awesome, and I think that we're getting to that. I honestly believe in my life and with him there, we're going to get to the ship, and it's going to happen, and we're all going to come together in this big bonfire, down by Uncle Ron's, formerly Uncle Ron's, currently the Spur, and we're going to have it's going to be pretty epic for any of these any of the old dogs and new dogs.
Yeah, man.
My side it was interesting because you talk about like those, only having 2 wins in that season that we all watched. And for us, it was, I came out of Baker and I only had 2 losses that came at the semifinal level. Geez. And so but then we come in and we do great. For the first 3 years, we're rolling. We're playing against Patrick Creighton, who goes to the Cowboys as a receiver, and he comes up here, and we got them on the ropes, and we're thinking, okay, big things. And then my senior year, we took a stumble and really got hung up offensively. Had a hard time kind of moving the ball. Some of that stuff was really starting to manifest itself, and had some phenomenal people, but just it wasn't all clicking. And we took a few losses early on, and 4 for the season total that year. And we still made it up to Carroll, played Carroll tight, had them up there. They'll laugh at me if they heard this, but I feel like we had them on the ropes. We had one play early on. They hit us a big one right over the middle within legitimately 2 inches. Their quarterback at the time, Emmert, he ended up playing up in the CFL, I think, for a little bit, coming back there and coaching. But Tyler Emmert, he threaded one on us and cut us deep, and but removed that like one play. I felt like we would have had him up there at home even, and but yeah, you talked about it a little bit ago, but we actually we struggle with the frontier too. Carroll's, as much as I despise the University of Mary logo and the Minot State logo, my time, Carroll College is
up there.
It's up there, and it may even be in front because they were the dream killer. They were the ones. My freshman year, they came in and they had a Chester, Montana tight end who ended up going and playing for the Lions for a while. I'm going to space him out, and I apologize for anybody from Montana listening, but he ended up playing for a while out there, and we thought we were going to have him there. And Nick Walker, we're down, we're going in, we're up, we're going to go up a few scores on him, and he's on a back foot, and he hits one just on the back of the end zone on an interception, turns it over. We don't get the score, and then we end up just losing by about that, and dang. So. Carroll, I'm not a particular fan.
Definitely not. Was your senior year, was Nick still the quarterback?
No, my senior year was Mike Spargo and Rafe Espinosa, where it was a juggling moment and back and forth. Started out with Mike Spargo, and then we finished with Rafe at the helm. Rafe only got picked up probably halfway through the year. He grabbed the helm and started steering the ship and did a lot of great things for us. He was I don't know if you ever had probably not, but heard stories, or anybody who's listening again, you watch Rafe, he was a gamer, he could make some plays. He had some athleticism during the games that it was pretty fun to watch. And so
just the epitome of Bluehawk, really.
Yeah.
Not the most physically talented, but you got the mental side to it too. And we started this conversation about DSU just about the subculture, how that has affected our lives and how it's affected our lives now in our careers. Again, a lot of my pipeline of kids are college kids, Trinity kids that I'm able to help out with. And so transitioning from that subculture into Dickinson's community and how that has helped elevate you. And it's no secret that in the last few years, your profession and officers below you that you oversee, it's changed. Things have changed as of recent. And so kind of guide us through that, kind of get us into your career in law enforcement.
Yeah, Initially for me, it was, a rural kid, country kid. I probably, when I was little, diesel mechanic and stuff like that, maybe auto body. Um, and as I got a little bit older, there was a lot of family issues. I got my great grandfather was an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic who committed suicide. I think when I think my mom was pregnant with me, but it was in '84, so ish. That's the year I was born. And then my father was a bad alcoholic, and so it's heavy in the genetics for me myself. And I realized that probably in my late teens, I started to feel like, okay, I got this kind of thing going on inside me. But a lot of I've told this story to the community. I did a speech a while back, and then I went in front of some kids in some schools, and I was. It was a very, very violent household. My father was extremely the physical aspect of it, like the beat downs my mom would get were just, they were astonishing. And the verbal aspect of it was probably just as bad. It's psychologically one of those things where, you go from just something so simple as like mama's boy and this stuff. And so I kind of lead with that because it's like, well, that was at a young age, and we didn't have a lot of money. Most trips to the mailbox consisted of a Bank of Baker overdraft. Pink slip is what they were. They'd come in and they were overdrafts. And my old man, he was drinking everything away and writing bad checks at the bar, and my mom was struggling with that. On top of obviously the abuse and raising a couple boys at that time. My sister wasn't here yet, and so that continued to go in, and then eventually, I got in, and the door opened. Probably really for the journey where I'm at now was sports and the males, the coaching figures, because it was the first time I ever got a hold of positive reinforcement from a male was when I got into the sports aspect of it, wrestling specifically, AAU, a bunch of good guys back then. And so anyways, I started with that. And then that led into football and then I continued to get these positive male role models in through the sports, and there were some teachers too, but that ended up opening my eyes to what should be and what should not be. And then because my hatred at the beginning of this for when I said for law enforcement, I had a bunch of situations when I was little where law enforcement was called and didn't do anything. And I said, well, this is kind of messed up. These guys are it's a small town, like, oh, we'll take care of things through a conversation. And I'd watch my father physically assault the sheriff at the time. I mean, take him over the hood of a squad car on one instance, pushing, shoving them. I mean, stuff that you just can't do. And seeing this stuff happen, I'm like, man, what's going on with this? How is this even something that works? And so, that in with then the positive stuff started to come, and I had all these good guys around me. And then I started this, then weightlifting came into the picture. And then I got a hold of a bar, and then I could feel how the bar and being able to get stronger and stuff. And then the whole goal was to, when it got into the weight room, was like, okay, now I have control of something that I can come back, and it was going to help me. So, the bullying and the stuff like that, because that all plays into this too. Like, this drive into wanting to be in law enforcement and stuff is because I was, bullied by my old man. And I had an older brother, he bullied me like an older brother would. He's, we love each other dearly, but so there's that, but that, and then, from a very young age. And so then we get up into this, the high school stuff, and then it's like, okay, then DSU comes, and then it's like I wanted to go to law school because I was so pissed off about the legal system and how the legal system just failed, all these different people. And so I started it with that in mind, and going to go be a lawyer. And then about partway through, I had my advisor, DSU advisor, Keith Fernsler. He's still around. See him from time to time, and very, very good human being. And he goes, you ever think about law enforcement? And in my first thing out of my mouth or in my head, I'm sure was just like, F that. Like, I'm not even close. I want to go be an attorney because I'm going to go and, one and above or whatever. It's like, well, you got some traits and attributes, and, you probably look good in a uniform, stuff like that. And I'm like, well, okay, all right, I'm going to go step away. And I got to thinking more about it. And then, And it just kind of planted a seed that grew. And then I talked to the chief of police up here. I had Ken Kuzi, who was a boss. I don't know if you ever knew Ken Kuzi. He was a huge DSU Bluehawk supporter and street department head for the city of Dickinson. I worked for them, and he put me in touch with the chief of police. That was my summer job, and put me in touch with the chief. And I sat down with him, and he's like, I want you. You just, whatever. You should just apply. And so I got done playing in the fall. And then they give me the opportunity here, and the drive. I kind of tell that behind the curtain story because everybody's, I want to be a police officer. I want to help people. It's like, okay, well, go bag groceries if you want to help people, right? Like, to do this long term, it's got to be. That's the essence of it for me. And so, as my career has kind of went on, I try to keep that in the front of it. That when I'm making decisions and doing stuff, I definitely mess up quite a bit. But that's what tries to, that's a ground zero that I always revert back to, and the career itself and what the profession has done. I mean, if you think about being a small town kid from, Baker, Ekalaka, and your closest neighbor just miles away. And then 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to go to the National Academy out at Quantico and graduated from there, from class 270. And, we had President Trump came and spoke, and
wow.
he's partway into his speech and talking about our yellow brick run. And I get the point and the head nod and the smirk, from him from down in the crowd, giving the hoorah type of thing. And it's like, I'm telling you about, just a crazy world in itself to think of yourself, coming from where we come from, right? These small towns. And then you're sitting there in Quantico, just outside D.C., and you got the President of the United States there, and just a split second, right? I mean, it's just a split second where he's just kind of looking down, gives that point, gives that head nod and the smirk. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, holy shit, this is like...
It's taking you places, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. And I'm humbled, and some would make fun of me for that kind of story just because it's like, but... it's I don't know. To me, it's telling, and Dickinson has been just a huge part of that. Yeah. It goes into what you said, that had I not had the opportunities this community gives, it's that wouldn't have happened.
I think it's important that you have that story, though, and I didn't realize that. Just having small talk with you in the past, my father is an alcoholic as well, bad, and so that has transformed what I do. And I've with college football, I had my run-in with pain medications and 3 shoulder surgeries, snapped my patellar tendon in Miles City. It's easy, very easy. Yeah. And we'll get back to the law enforcement stuff, but I'm giving a speech for Power Athlete, these guys here in Austin, Texas, here in September.
Move the Dirt?
Yeah, Move the Dirt. So John Wellborn, he played for the Chiefs for a long time, played for Philly, offensive lineman, and he's built this company that just 100% performance. It's all about the performance side of things. General population's out of the picture. We're all about the athletes. And so I became a Block 1 coach, which this was last September. It's grueling. I mean, I'm in there with SEALs. I'm in there with Recon Marines, doctors, physical therapists, and there's only 127 of us in the world right now. And so long story short behind that is I've given this speech, and it's a well-polished speech because I've given it before, but using what we were given, father figures that were unhealthy, and yours went deeper as well, using that to our advantage. And I was actually training Jay Liggins probably a month ago, and still am. And he told me, he's like, I wanted to find somebody that was very, very passionate about it. And this is why I think your story is very important. I want to find somebody that's passionate about what we're doing, because then no amount of work matters. We're gonna get it done. And so I kind of tied it to addiction in some sense. An addict is going to do whatever it takes, write blank checks, do all this stuff to get their fix. Well, me having the experience with pain medications and feeling that, now use that in this profession. Oh, it's early, I don't want to do a podcast. Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm going to do it, Yeah. So using that side is, I think, helped you, and it helped ground you. And I know myself, I have beers here and there, but it's not because of my past with my father and family. It's not my thing, man. Yeah. You I'm sure you know that feeling.
Yeah, the resiliency for me to be able to use that, the mental mapping, so that happens at a young age, and It's obviously, it can be you can go as deep as you want with it, because you think about a lot of the kids that don't do well when it out of it, right? They fall down it because they're in the cycle, and the cycle continues on. And I don't know. I mean, like I shared earlier, so some of those early exposures I had to positive male reinforcement was definitely a facilitator in it. I got a phenomenal mother who is just I mean, a hell of a woman. And so and women predominantly, I got to say that too. I mean, my life has been surrounded predominantly by women. I talk about the impact of the men, but
mine too,
by women. And so I have to say that my grandma, my mom, and even now, I mean, that's why, I mean, I got 2 daughters right now. It's like, I guarantee there's a reason I got 2 daughters, there's, so yeah, it's it's crazy. And the dramatic effect of it, like, I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, I think about the trauma that is so numbing, that became so numbing for me. Like now, like in uniform, people say stuff, and you get the stuff poking officers, or what maybe make officers upset, or with things people say. It's like a lot of it for me is it just becomes water off a duck's back, because I'm just like, man, I these other things that I've been exposed to in life, from my earliest memory that I have in life, which was my father pounding on top of my mother in the living room. I said through that, I mean, it's like, come on, like you try to get these other guys on board. You're like, hey man, don't worry about it, dude. It's just like, This is going to be, it's fine. And it's, so again, it's a blessing. I got that, and I'm in a profession now where it has set me up, I think, to be able to handle a barrage of different things and get some thick skin. So
yeah, you're almost desensitized to what's going on.
Yeah,
definitely.
And my wife has told me, she goes, it's kind of messed up, because stuff will happen at work, and then you come home and I sleep pretty good.
Another day.
Yeah, I do. I sleep pretty good, and it's not because I'm unempathetic or unsympathetic to others and the issues they have, because but I actually think that I probably can keep it better and focus on what they're dealing with because of it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
not making emotional decisions off of that. Yeah. Having attachments to it. Definitely. I felt the same thing. It was managing expectations for me as well. Like,
yeah, well said.
Yeah. You can't, I can't expect, I can't trust on this going to happen. I just got to manage my expectations of it. And so that's kind of how I moved forward with it and tried to find something positive. I'm sure you found my wife pushing me to have kids here soon, so it's going to happen. Yeah. But you've seen that exactly what you don't want to be in a father. That's something that I've taken. So that's huge for you. I had on here too, because I got to talk to my uncle and my father. How COVID really attacked law enforcement, how that's changed things for you guys. So how has that kind of put a wrench in the gears a little bit for you guys this last few years?
Well, the stuff that can hit you right away is obviously safety protocols during the course of the peak of the epidemic, and masks and PPE, stuff like that. That was something that we definitely had changed, and we're trying to be more conscious of. And in our responses and working with the health department, like if we're going to hot zones and stuff like that, where we knew there was positive tests or things like that, we were kind of on the spot with a lot more. But there was there was a lot of good stuff that came out of it, forcing some of the change that everybody else had to experience. I mean, we were able to discover that in some of these tough situations, there's a number of us that are able to work from home, still get the job done. Still get some things accomplished, which was nice. But to a testament, to speak probably, I think, to a good majority of the profession. There's 700, 800,000 officers out there. Most of them were, they just wanted to do their job. I mean, they weren't overly concerned about the whole, like, well, okay, if I do catch something or get something, catastrophic is going to happen. Certainly I don't want to, make somebody else sick, but for they themselves, I know here, like our men and women, they're just like, okay, give me this, but just let me go do my job. I just want to go, keep taking calls, keep getting out there. This is why I'm here. And they were pretty resilient with it, I thought. And now after the fact, things are really kind of carrying over from that. There's some technology that came about in the middle of COVID for like CompStat and call taking and things like that. That'll probably continue on, which is a good thing. Yeah, it was a whirlwind. There ain't no doubt about it. So some of the stuff we never did get answers for, and you just grab a hold of the bar and hold on to the bar as long as you can, and
control what you can, man. Yeah. It's affected every single. There's not one stone unturned. It's affected every single thing, and I was very interested in this with my background with struggling with pain medications and this stuff. We obviously know that Dickinson and the United States as a whole has struggled with opiates, with a lot of stuff as that. With COVID, it was amplified. Everything was very amplified. And as much as you can share, have you seen any different trends during COVID? Have we increased with a lot of calls with opiates and stuff like that? Have the drugs increased on that end?
To attribute it exactly to COVID, it probably I couldn't give a great answer to it, but I can say that I mean it has continued to become more prevalent to degrees. The opiates, the heroin, the M30, these ecstasy pills that are just rampant right now, running around the community. I mean, it seems like our officers are coming in contact with those as much as anything else right now when they're handling illegal drugs. And so I saw one the other day. It was interesting. It was like maybe 15 years ago that it was the number of prescriptions, number of
oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, prescriptions that doctors had been issuing for some of this medication, and then it was fast forward to current day, and I mean it was exponentially higher. I mean, I wish I could cite the number offhand for it, but I mean it was like, let's just say a number of like I don't know, it was at 20 million, and now it's like at 75 million or some 100 million, something like that. I mean, it's just it was pretty alarming when I saw the numbers themselves, and so. I know the one that's I heard the other day too, and I'm doing some of my own podcast. Listening was I know like Jordan Peterson. I follow him, and he was addicted on benzos, like a Xanax and stuff. And the one to watch is like pay attention to how many people are prescribed these benzos, and the long-term effects of taking these benzos, and come time if you ever decide to get off of them, like these neurological issues and stuff. And if take a listen if you ever get a chance. But I mean, it was like, and the repercussions of that might be something that in the future I think we'll be dealing with in our profession as much as anything.
Yeah, he had very severe autoimmune issues. I mean, he's dealt with a lot of stuff. He went straight carnivore for a long time. And it's helped him a lot. I was talking to Sean Hope and on a podcast, and paramedic, and he had been doing this during the boom. When I got here, it was like 2012, so still very, very up there. But the drugs were very rampant, and he's seen, I mean, the amount of times that they have to deliver Narcan and all these things are exponentially getting worse. And there's no safe haven. Let me pull up this real quick. I had a figure, fewest overdoses per capita. North Dakota is number 48, so fewest there. That's awesome, but it's a hard right. with our numbers. Yep. Then you look at most arrests per capita. South Dakota, Wyoming are both on there. So there's no real safe haven for this shit that we're dealing with all this fentanyl, and it's taken more lives than I've seen. And so I've been on that end, being with those terrible people, being on having to play with opiates in my system because I hurt so bad, like a lot of different things. And I can see just how it deteriorates people very quickly, very, very quickly. And I didn't know if that even compared to, because during the boom, things were very crazy for you guys, correct?
Yeah. They were. And it was, still at the forefront for us is methamphetamine.
Oh, yeah.
And heroin. The discussion with marijuana as it goes, I mean, I get asked that quite a bit, being in the profession as long as I have. And I don't know. I mean, there's the trend that's occurring and the decriminalization and the legalization, and it certainly is probably going to head that way at some time. And it's like, okay, it's my philosophy on this is like, I'm about whatever the policymakers or the community want to be the law. Okay. And if they don't like the law, then change the damn law. Yeah. If you don't like, DUIs being at a 0.08 or whatever you want to complain about, well, go change the law. But you can't, don't hate on the people that are expected to go and enforce the very things
exactly.
that they didn't put that on paper. That's the guy you elected, the policymakers and the politicians, and so to speak, that put that law in, and you voted on them. So it's like, I try to get that squared away with people, because a lot of times, they just get so emotional, and they're like, oh, I was like, well, okay, well, fair enough. But then if you don't want the speed limit to be 25 anymore, you want it to be 30, 35, go change the law. Yeah. I mean, it's so whatever the expectation of the community becomes, law enforcement's going to evolve. I really do believe that's how most of the men and women in the profession think. The back to like the meth and the heroin and this whole the idea of the drug problem, and maybe that kind of takes us to how's it going to go moving forward. Oregon just went to that massive reform, progressive reform with the decriminalization, legalization. I think it's there's a certain level and amount. Maybe if it's under half an ounce or an ounce, anything, pay the $100 and you can go away, or go to drug treatment is like the alternative. There's some more details in there I'm not including, but it's something pretty crazy. And so I guess we'll see. If they're going to do it, then we're gonna sit and watch and trying to be progressive. But I'm really reluctant. And even on the marijuana side of it, if it comes, it's like people ask, like, okay, well, you don't deal with a bunch of people who go smoke weed. At the end of the day, you deal with people who go, drink a 6-pack. As far as how it affects us as people. And it's like, yeah, but I agree. The most, we do a lot of alcohol related stuff. A good percentage of our stuff is alcohol related that we end up having to get involved in. But I'm like, do not think that by just decriminalization or legalizing this, if it ends up, marijuana, let's talk, it's going to, there's going to be some consequences that seep through the cracks and stuff. So, but whatever the law ends up being, that it is what it is.
And you guys are not hands tied, but your perspective as an individual, you don't have control over that. You have to enforce what you have to enforce, and that's what people don't get. Like, you could have a perspective on something and completely opposite is what you have to enforce. And so the one thing that really sets me back with the legalization of marijuana is the statistics of how much earlier kids are abusing and using. And abusing may be the wrong word, but to some extent, that really, when they did studies in Colorado, that's where I didn't really like it. That increase more in schools and the kids getting exposed to it earlier. I don't know if that's a healthy thing. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's the one thing that I just didn't like, the statistics on that. And then you hear these people and these Joe Rogan has a perspective on it, and a lot of people that he follows, that if once we legalize marijuana, and you know this way better than I, once we legalize marijuana, it's going to decrease the footprint of our drug cartels in the United States. And that's one of the most asinine comments that I've ever heard. They've already pushed past that. They've pushed past the marijuana. They're into fentanyl and all this other stuff, as you know.
Yeah. The synthetic world, as it relates in the effects and being able to get to the drugs. I mean, there's always going to be the black market to undercut whatever the market is, and finding a way. Out of Colorado, a couple law enforcement officers down there that have told stories about some of these houses that have been bought up down there, cartel related, and they're jamming and packing them full of marijuana plants, stuff like that. Try to make an argument things are legalized and stuff. And I don't believe it will curb those individuals that, the cartel and those that are in, let's just say, the black market illegal side of it that much.
They're businessmen.
Yeah.
They're going to move on.
Yeah. It's going to evolve, and there's so much money to be said there that you certainly could, from the taxation side, there's going to be some things they may be able to capitalize on. And maybe I just back off and I just tell people, like, listen, do not think that there are not going to be some unintended consequences, and there's going to be other problems that are going to surface. This is not going to just fix whatever it is you think, it's going to fix. And as long as they like, hey, yeah, and I've had a couple say, yeah, no, I get that, and there'll be some trade-offs. I mean, okay, well then we can have a conversation about that. But I really get sideways if somebody's like, by doing this, it's going to fix all of these things. And I like how you bring up like the exposure with young kids, because you're right. It's, you freely get it there. It's going to be in more households, more freely, more accessible that way. And I think the last one, North Dakota, I apologize for forgetting the legislator's name, but the talk obviously with the gummies and talking about, talking about certain levels and stuff like that, and kids getting their hands on some of these things and some of the side effects of the levels on the THC end of it, and the volatility of it is now versus 20, 30 years ago on the consumption, I think is one that should be highlighted for people who want to have it to the discussion.
Yeah, definitely. This is something that I know you hold dear and near to your heart too, and I like the comment that you had earlier. Control what you can control, and once you got your hands on a barbell, 500 pounds is 500 pounds. You either got it or you don't.
Yep.
That's the aspect that I really gravitated towards. I can have all these attributes, but if I don't got it that day, I don't got it. And so I wanted to talk about this because I have family members in my family that are law enforcement that are unhealthy, that are very unhealthy. And you obviously, people that know you, you take that very seriously. You take a very proactive approach to, I would say, being the best individual you can be that day, trying to hit your potential every single day. And so it's no secret that we do have an issue. And a lot of this, and I do want to bias this data, but there was a study that came out that 8 out of 10 police officers are obese. I get that, but they also use BMI.
Yeah, right.
You and I are obese for that. So that's where I kind of push back on it. But we do in every profession and everything. Yeah. So I had some factors behind it that you know much better than I. Long hours, shift work, lack of sleep, increased stress, lack of education to some extent. And so kind of speak to that. How have you combated that yourself? What does that look like?
Well, just some of the stuff at the very beginning was, my disdain for law enforcement and how I viewed them when I was growing up, and then what I wanted it to look like, or bring to it. Looking good in uniform, being physically fit, being able to handle yourself, high stress situations, have people look at the uniform in a manner that they're like, man, that looks good. That's my, I love that, man. If anywhere I go, if I see a female officer or male officer get out of the car, man, and they're looking high and tight and they got to put together a uniform, to me, it's just like, oh, that's, I really, really, I get a smile on my face, because we do have a problem. And the fact is, all those things that you highlighted, it's kind of sad some days, because I know, how many of them are out there, the officers, that they're just not, they're going to pay such a price. I mean, the average life expectancy the other day I saw that was thrown out on policeone.com on a study that they had done, is 22 years less than the average person. Damn. And so it's like 79, 57 on that, 55, 57. That's about 2 years past your normal retirement date, And it's like, I got a lot of young officer friends that are, they're bad with sleep and this and a lot of talk. And it's like, and I always be like, well, man, geez, what are you doing to fix it? What are you doing to fix it? Fix it. And they're not doing anything to fix it. And, it's always easy to find the excuses. And, I got a thing. It's like, in order to be fit for duty, first you got to be fit. And I've gotten a rash of crap over time. Sometimes being, whether being called a meathead or being called like, kind of a little over the top with it. And there's probably times where I have, but it does come from a place of, I'm really genuine about like just wanting our men and women to be in shape and healthy. And you take advantage of it when you're young, because you can get away with it, with the shift work and your circadian rhythms messed up, and, you can rebound and fight through stuff. But the toll that the pay that you pay over time and how it adds up. Now, 15 years into my career, I see it with my brother, and I see it with these guys that didn't do it very well early on, and I'm watching it now, and it's like, man, and it's even harder for them to get going with it. And you're just like, just doing something is better than doing nothing. Yes. Whatever it is, it's like, just
even if you don't take it as serious as we do.
Yeah.
There's something to be done. I didn't, and this is a question for my own curiosity. Getting into the academy, there's obviously some physical standards there, and you can talk to that. But after that, what are some of the physical parameters that we do have to meet?
Sure, yeah. Agency dependent, jurisdiction dependent, and so you get most state academies are going to have your entry level minimum standards, which you could capitalize in bold minimum there. I mean, my opinion on most of them is they're pretty laughable, and they should be higher and more stringent. And then I'd be interested to know what the poll is after you get in, but it's probably I bet you it's less than 50%. I'll be careful. If I had to bet, I'd bet less than 50% of agencies have an annual physical fitness requirement that is required of their officers. And maybe I'd be wrong on that, but I'm just thinking real quick the ones that I know, and they don't. Now, but if you're on a SWAT team or specialized duty and stuff like that, maybe there's some other special response teams. Stuff, they might have some extra stringent ones, and that's what we have here. If you're on our SWAT team, you have to do an annual physical fitness test and stuff. That does help out. But somebody told me the other day, man, it was like they were talking about leadership, and they were all hung up on leadership and the department's investment, and hey, getting us to this, and why doesn't the department do this? And I came back and I just said, is it their job to get you in shape? Is it their job to get your ass moving, to make, to be more physically fit? And of course they kind of were like, because they weren't a particular fan of that, and not a particular fan of a mandatory physical fitness test, annual physical fitness test. It's like, it ain't their job to make you smarter either.
Exactly.
It's like you gotta, but of course we be pick and choose and stuff that best suits us at the time. I get it, but I hope it has got better though. I just want to say that I think in my time in the profession, it has got better because there's more focus on it. There's more scrutiny. Body cameras are showing certain things. We're getting exposed in a way where departments are now held more accountable and having to make sure that their men and women are up to spec with it. So it is getting better. But we got a long ways to go still. And I think maybe in the future, some of the ways to attack it at an easy way are finding some different scheduling. You still got to your 24/7 stuff, but then that comes at the cost of the taxpayers, because then you get into staffing and manpower and how many officers you want. It takes a certain amount of officers to staff certain kinds of shifts and stuff. So those will be things that the communities obviously will have to decide amongst themselves. But it's a problem. It's a problem, Coley. I don't know. Yeah.
And we see it in everything too. It's just you guys are in front of the camera is the problem. The problem and the positive too. But you guys are in front of the camera, in front of the lights that everybody sees, and so it gives you guys some unwanted pressure. But obviously, it's good change to some extent.
Yeah. I agree. And you and I say it as I know you're passionate about the fitness stuff. But you'd be amazed if I push back on that a little bit of how many really, really hate to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They really they really don't like to hear what you're saying, because they just like it. It feels better to sit than to stand. And I don't know, it bothers me, but it is what it is.
Only so much you can do as well. My outlook, and then I'm going to kind of ask you, we'll wrap it up a little bit, ask you about what your day looks like on the strength and conditioning side. But my outlook from the backside, being on the other side, is look at what the demand is. If we can structure something very, very positive for every officer that is patrolling, being in these high stress situations, reverse engineer what you're going to be have happen to you. It's going to be a lot of anaerobic work, a fast sprint, a scuffle. Hopefully we don't have to get to that, but it's anaerobic in nature, very short, fast burst with some aerobic stuff on the side. So you could stick very, very basically to the basics. So we look at this, we reverse engineer it. This is the demand what we need to have happen. And this is what our roadmap is. So a lot of anaerobic work, looking through all planes of motion, okay? Because a good quote that you'll appreciate that I always talked about to people, if you're in a performance-based, an athlete, LEO, firefighter, military, if you're doing all your stuff and you can do every one of your movements in a doorway, something's wrong. We're only in the sagittal plane. We're only forward and back. Mm-hmm. And so looking at multiplanar, transverse, rotating at the hips, side to side, and sagittal would be a freaking upgrade. That would be awesome, you know?
I like to call it the tactical athlete.
Yes, yes, 100%. Why am I forgetting? I'll remember the name, but a guy out of Montana doing some really cool, he was on, I'll remember his name, but the Cleared Hot podcast.
Oh, Andy Stump.
Andy Stump.
Yep.
So he was on Andy Stump's just talking performance for the officer, and it's a lot of anaerobic work. It's a lot of sticking to the basics too. We need you to be strong and fast, so stick to the basics. We can get our Olympic weightlifting in. You can get into your powerlifting movements. But then a big thing that I was thinking about when I was making this podcast is need a big focus on rate of force development, making sure you can produce the maximal amount of force in the minimal amount of time.
Yeah.
That's what we need. And then a big thing in short burst sprints or anything, a lot of posterior chain work, hammies, glutes. Talking to John Wellborn, who played in the NFL for 10 years. He's like, I could give a shit less if I step off the plane and I see a guy, big upper body, nice big neck, all this. He's like, you see the guy with the big fat ass and the big hamstrings, he's going to mess you up. Yeah. Like that's the people you want to stay away from. So if I broke it down very specifically, multiplanar, an emphasis on rate of force development, and stick to the basics, man. And I'm sure yours looks something like that. I know you had some experience in CrossFit and your take on that, but what does it look like for you? What does your training take on?
Yeah, no, I like all that, and everything that I'm doing right now is just what you described. You know, for the listeners, I say it from the professional side. It was like aerobics is going to get you to the fight, mm-hmm. and anaerobics is going to win the fight. Yeah. And you know, our gunfights, our firefights, our time compressed, high stressed situations are 20 seconds and less. You know, I mean, these things, the people have this Hollywood gun battle sort of stuff happening in their mind, and they think, and it's just been horrible for the perception, because the reality is that this stuff happens in such a small, tight, high stressed window. And, you know, so, okay, how does that apply to, you know, your expertise? And you just said it. It's, mm-hmm. you gotta condense these things and being able to move, sprints, short burst stuff. And so for me, I try to center, I stick to the four cores, you know, mm-hmm. I'll stick to bench press, you know, overhead press. Sometimes I'll mix some power cleans in on my overhead press days, because I got issues with my shoulder mobility and they get jacked up pretty easy. So I try to keep it a little bit varied there. But deadlifts, squats. Again, I have the barbell squats are a little bit more of an issue the older I get. My L5 is fractured and I got to slip forward. Shit. So I got a little bit of that nerve stuff going on in my leg that goes numb about half the time. But I mean, but scaling it though, right? It's like, I mean, even on these guys, you know, learning to scale and do what you can as far as you can. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'll scale those things when I'm hurting, but even still trying to accomplish them. But then the kettlebell work, the bands, you know, we talked about in the email, we had some exchanges we had, but the band work, the traverse plane, right? Like getting that kettlebell moving side to side, some things like that, trying to, the ruck stuff. I do a lot of walking backwards. People in my neighborhood, I think, probably think I got some mental health issues, but you know, I got a 40-pound vest and do a lot of, the sprinting backward up the hills and stuff like that, sprinting forward up the hills. And, Got the ladder work still that, you get it. So, getting the feet moving but so I'll start off with the core stuff, and I'll I take a lot more time in between sets than what I used to. Now I really try to stay to the 3 to 5 minutes. Before when I was younger, I was probably, that 2 minutes, and I got to get going here because I'm going to look like I'm a sissy type of thing.
Yeah.
But, and then I'll finish with, usually always finish with 10 to 20 minutes. My wife, she is a member of street parking. And so she gets this street parking thing, and we have a garage gym that we've now invested in and at home, and so we do a lot of that there because of the girls and stuff. But so I'll do the street parking thing with her sometimes, or whatever she has laid out, and throw in some of my own stuff there. But
cool. That's one thing that I did not mention. Load carriage. I was at a national strength and conditioning conference, and load carriage seems to be one of the major issues. You said you had a back issue, but load carriage over time. What is your guys' one of your officers' normal kit, everything on weigh?
Yeah, a good question. I think if I had to give you an average weight, gun, magazines, and everything, what's on the body, 20 pounds-ish. Now, depending on some guys and gals, some kind of are selective with how many mags. Some might have some extra mags, and that's quite a bit, obviously, a loaded mag added on there. Throw just even 1 or 2. Probably about 15 to 20 pounds, I would say, gun belt and all, loaded up and ready to go. We converted over to the external vests in the last couple of years, and that's been a big one to get that weight off the hips and dispersed up on top. Okay. And our guys and gals are pretty happy with that.
20 to 25, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Our SWAT vests, the SWAT guys, they carry a heavier level on the ballistic side of it. So those are definitely closer to 30 pounds and such. But 20 pounds plus is a safe bet for a minimum. And you think about that, it's like, okay, so, you and I, 6 foot plus, 200 plus pound guys. Yeah. And then, you go look at some of our officers. We got some smaller stature men and women. And it's like, man, that's a lot for them.
Yeah,
exactly.
I at that conference they were just talking about lower back issues in military and LEO, and how load carriage over time can deteriorate, but also being proactive in it, rucking, even just walking load carriage can change the game for what you're doing. If we can accommodate to that progressively overload into what we need to do every single day, we can mitigate a lot of the lower back stuff. I've seen it in Warland with a lot of the officers, lower back tightness, and then their hip flexors get real tight because of that connection between the two.
Yeah, so. And this seated portion of it. I was a nuisance, my commander, for the last 3 to 4 years, and about like, dude, we need to get these standing desks. We got to get these standing desks in the office. We got to get this stuff going, because these guys are going from sitting in a car, right? You're getting out occasion, but they're in this they're on patrol for 70% of their time, doing this in the car, where seat ergonomics, hamstring, all this stuff that you can talk to much better than me. And then they get out, and then they come in, and then they sit their asses down, and they got to do their reports at the desk. And it's like, Jesus, we are seated way too much. Like, get up and get on your feet, And I don't know if it was Mark Bell's I was listening to, somebody's I was listening to. It was a fitness one, and he was taught just stand more than you sit. Stand more than you sit. Think about it. I was like, okay, that's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple thing that. And so now he just told me yesterday that he came a hold of. He's got 25 of them coming, I think. So everybody in the building is going to be able to have a standing desk now. Finally. So and I've had one for a little bit, and I've been sitting on the stability ball for about 10, 12 years. My buddies, they always make fun of me. They come in and they kind of look around there. And
good trunk work right there.
Yeah. And it has popped on me a couple times too.
I popped a few of those too.
So
I had a posture corrector for a little while, just almost a little backpack one. Makes you look like you got the invisible lat syndrome and stuff, but it helped a lot, helped a ton, because I had 3 shoulder surgeries, so that helped me a ton.
So is that on that's the top half, like
your kind of broadens your shoulders a little bit. Yeah, it's almost like a very tight backpack.
Okay,
I would have to wear sometimes. It would rub you pretty bad here, and I was just a cheap one, but you can get really nice with that. And John Wellborn talks about it a lot in my philosophy. Whoever can hold posture and position longer is going to win in any type of football battle, gunfight. If you can hold posture and position against an external load, barbell, human, whatever it is, you're more than likely going to win that battle. And so
I've never heard it like that, but that actually that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
so
well,
think about
being
that.
a hell dog playing for DSU too. I was just telling some of the college kids, taking on a punch step or whatever. If you the quicker if your offensive lineman takes a bucket step, you got him beat. Small stuff like that if you can hold that against the external load, we talk about it with squats. I should not be able to know that bar's on your back is kind of what you want to do. 1 rep maxes are never going to be pretty, but I shouldn't be able to see that.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I tell people. So
yeah, that's that is interesting. I've never really thought of it like that from that whole standpoint, but I like that.
Yeah, man. So we'll wrap it up, dude. I was awesome. It was more than I expected to. I appreciate that a lot. I had 2 closing questions, and this is very vague, but I hope that some people can find something specific that they can do. How can the average citizen in Dickinson help you guys out? How can we, and stuff that actually helps you guys out, not just the petty,
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of getting people excited about their own protection, from a self-defense standpoint to, when you think about your home and then take that into your family and then your community. And it's much that, like, listen, I mean, we become so numb because we have it so good here. And let's just say crime and all this good stuff. It's just a very safe place to live. And so people, again, they just like, okay. And when stuff happens, sometimes it's, kind of looking around you like, okay, well, or calling law enforcement. And you definitely should in probably most of the situations, but, being more proactive and seeing something, saying something, that's cliche to the fullest, as we all know it. But I just say that, like, get excited about making sure that you're doing what you can to keep yourself safe, keeping your family safe, and being vigilant in what's going on in Dickinson and what's happening. What the baselines are here. We all know, I mean, these lifelong people, and so reporting that, and then holding us accountable as law enforcement. It's like, listen, if something might not come across always maybe as important as what it actually is, I don't know, but following up, hold us accountable. I mean, because we need that. Like, I mean, you call, you make a report, and I'm telling people, like, hey, if you didn't hear back, just call again. Say, hey, what's going on with this, man? What'd you find out? And just being very vigilant in that way. And if you haven't ever really thought about what the baseline is, as I say that, like, well, just look around your 2-3 city blocks and just start paying attention a little bit. You'll find out in about a week what the baseline is. And then just, there's 44 and a half sworn officers in this town, and there's 23,000 people. And so at any given time, you have maybe 5 officers, DPD squads running around. Sometimes more. There's Stark County, there's highway patrol and stuff. Fine. But just think about that. So they have 5 squad cars running around. They are not going to see everything that's happening in the city of Dickinson. A lot of stuff happening in their brains, and the visual intelligence portion of it. I mean, it's difficult. So, we need help. And so I like it when people get excited about, kind of taking their own part in the community safety aspects. So
concealed carry, it's more prevalent here in Wyoming and stuff, which is very nice. I decided a stupid decision, but I finally got it built. I built myself a second or third AR I've ever built, but I built a 300 Blackout during COVID.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it's a thumper, 9-inch barrel, Bravo company all over. It's a nice one. So been thumping that a little bit, but yeah, man,
very nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I appreciate all this, man. This was a lot of fun for me. Everybody listening. So they can find Off the Cuff on YouTube. Are you going to go Spotify, that kind of stuff too?
Yeah, he's got it on Spotify, YouTube. There was a couple other ones there, and I apologize for the brain fart. You can even
iTunes.
iTunes is on there. I feel like there's another one too, but he's got them on almost a handful of different
Stature,
platforms.
Probably.
Yeah.
Cool.
Could be. And so it's there. I mean, you can just track our Dickinson Police Department Facebook to get a beginning look at the last one or any of those ones we just talked about. So it should be good. So
Well, I appreciate your time, man. I know Bakken barbecues today, you said?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and it's the theme of the event, pork. So we got a booth over there right now, and I know this, depending on when this one goes out to your listeners, but yeah, it's good. It's another example. They're doing this for first responders, and so cool. I mean, we as first responders can't piss that away that, we have this kind of support, and you don't want to violate the public's trust in a manner like some of these other areas are dealing with. So we're just lucky, man, and look forward to tonight. It looks like I was over there this morning, and it is going to be a packed house, and
Sweet.
Weather looks good. So.
Awesome. Well, peeps, that's another Next Level Radio. You guys can find Kylan on Facebook. You can find through the Off the Cuff podcast, and I appreciate this more than you know, man. I appreciate it. So you guys have a good one. We will see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me, Cole.
Yes, sir.